They say if you drive fast enough over the Third Mainland Bridge at 2 a.m., you can finally outrun your own thoughts. I always thought that was a joke, a Lagos urban myth told by people who have had too much to drink at a Victoria Island lounge. But tonight, I really needed it to be true. The exhaustion was heavy, not just the physical kind. It was that deep, hollow tiredness you get from smiling too much, from nodding at clients, from pitching campaigns, from running an agency where everything is supposed to look blissful, even when your own mind feels like a chaotic traffic jam. You spend your entire day crafting the perfect story for everyone else, but you can't seem to write a happy ending for yourself. I checked my phone. The screen glared at me. 2:14 a.m. My ride had cancelled. Of course he did. Lagos doesn't care about your deadlines. It doesn't care that your brain is screaming for rest. I stood there on the edge of the road, the damp night air clinging to my skin. The lagoon smelled like salt and old secrets. And just as I was about to give up and start walking, I saw the headlights. Two pale yellow beams cutting through the heavy Lagos mist. It was a Danfo, a yellow commercial bus, but it was wrong. Usually, they rattle, they cough thick black smoke. You hear the conductor banging on the side, screaming out destinations before you even see the vehicle. But this one, it was completely silent. It just glided to a stop right in front of me. The door was already open. The interior was lit by this soft, almost unnatural amber light. I couldn't see the driver. The seats were empty. It was pristine. Not a single scratch on the yellow paint. Not a single tear in the leather seats. Any sane person in this city would have stepped back. You don't get into an empty Danfo at 2 a.m. You just don't. But I was so tired. I was so incredibly tired of making the safe, calculated choices that were getting me nowhere. And something inside me, that quiet, cynical voice that usually tells me everything I'm doing wrong, suddenly went totally quiet. I stepped onto the bus. The doors slid shut behind me with a soft whisper. The engine hummed a low rhythmic vibration that felt more like a heartbeat than a machine. I sat in the middle row, right by the window. We merged onto the bridge. The Third Mainland Bridge is a monster. 11.8 kilometers of concrete suspended over dark, churning water. During the day, it's a parking lot of angry drivers and hawkers. But at this hour, it was a graveyard. The yellow street lights flicked past my window in a hypnotic rhythm. Flash, dark, flash, dark. I leaned my head against the cold glass. For the first time all day, I closed my eyes. I tried to relax, but then the thoughts started creeping in. The doubts, the endless loop of every mistake I made that week. The inner critic that I had spent years trying to unveil and dissect so it wouldn't hurt me anymore. It started whispering. Why are you like this? Why do you push everyone away when things get hard? Why is your soul so thirsty for perfection when you know it's a trap? It is like you are constantly trying to take sips from an empty cup. I opened my eyes, shaking the thoughts away. I looked at the time on my phone. 2:45 a.m. Wait, that couldn't be right. I looked out the window. The yellow street lights were still flicking past. Flash, dark, flash, dark. The dark expanse of the lagoon stretched out on both sides. We had been driving at top speed for over 30 minutes. You can cross the entire Third Mainland Bridge in 10 minutes at this hour. There was no traffic, no checkpoints, just a straight line. But we were still on the bridge. I stood up, my heart suddenly hammering against my ribs. The air in the bus felt colder now, thicker. "Excuse me," I called out to the front. "Driver?" No answer. The partition between the back and the front was tinted pitch black. "Driver, where are we? This isn't right." The bus didn't slow down, but the rhythmic hum of the engine started to change. It sounded deeper, and then the bus began to pull over. There are no bus stops in the middle of the Third Mainland Bridge. There is nothing but the concrete barrier and the deadly drop into the water below. But the bus was slowing down, pulling towards the edge as if there was a designated platform waiting for us. The brakes hissed. The bus came to a complete stop. I held my breath. My hands were shaking. I looked out the window into the dense, foggy night. There was nothing out there, just the dark water below and the empty road behind us. But then, I heard it. The soft scrape of shoes against the asphalt. Someone was walking towards the bus. In the middle of the lagoon, in the middle of the night. The doors slid open. A rush of cold wind swept through the perfect yellow interior, and from the shadows, a figure stepped onto the bus. I froze. My mind completely went blank. I couldn't scream. I couldn't move. Because the person standing there, the person who had just boarded an impossible bus on an endless bridge, was wearing a dress I threw away 5 years ago. I stared at the dress. It was a deep, striking emerald green. The fabric was slightly frayed at the hem, exactly the way I remembered it. The woman stepped fully into the amber light of the bus. She didn't look at me at first. She just walked slowly down the aisle, her footsteps completely silent against the floor, and sat 2 rows ahead of me. I couldn't breathe. The profile, the way she held her tense shoulders, the heavy, dark circles under her eyes. It was me, not the me sitting here now, frozen in panic. It was an older version of me, or rather, a past version. The exact version of me from late 2025, November to be exact. Those 2 specific days, the 24th and the 25th, were burned into my memory forever. I remembered the absolute chaos of that movie shoot, the relentless shouting, the frantic phone calls coordinating the cast, the desperate pressure to get every single shot perfect before we lost the daylight. I had worn that green dress on the first day of the shoot. I wore it like armor, pretending I had everything under control when inside I was falling apart. And now, here she was, sitting on an empty Danfo in the middle of a bridge that had no end. She slowly turned her head, her eyes, filled with that familiar burning exhaustion, locked onto mine. And then she spoke, but her lips didn't move. Her voice just echoed directly inside my head. "You thought it would be enough," she whispered. The voice was mine, but it sounded hollow, drained of all warmth. "You thought if you just pushed yourself to the absolute breaking point, if you just dragged that project into the editing room by early 2026, you would finally feel like you had made it. You would finally feel worthy." I tried to speak, to defend myself, but my throat was completely tight. "Did it work?" she asked, tilting her head slightly. "Did it fix the emptiness, or did you just find a new project, a new deadline to hide behind?" I squeezed my eyes shut. I wanted to scream at the driver to stop the bus. I wanted to smash the window and jump into the dark lagoon. Anything to escape that voice. My own voice. When I opened my eyes, the seat was empty. The emerald green dress was gone. The bus was entirely empty again. The rhythmic hum of the engine had returned to normal. I looked out the window. The yellow streetlights were still flashing by in that hypnotic, never-ending pattern. Flash, dark, flash, dark. I grabbed my phone with trembling hands. 3:15 a.m. There was no signal, no network coverage, just a small no service warning glowing at the top of the screen. I was completely cut off from the world. I realized then, with a cold, sinking dread in my stomach, that this wasn't a nightmare. This was a reckoning. This bus wasn't taking me to the island. It was driving me through my own timeline. And there were more stops ahead. The engine's hum deepened again, that same heavy vibrating sound. The bus began to veer to the right, slowing down towards the edge of the bridge. "No," I whispered. "No, please, don't stop, just keep driving." But the brakes hissed. The bus shuddered and came to a halt. The doors slid open, letting in that chilling, damp wind from the lagoon. I braced myself. I gripped the edges of my seat so hard my knuckles turned white. Who was it going to be this time? Another failure? Another time I pushed myself too hard? Footsteps. But these were different. They weren't the heavy, tired steps of an exhausted producer. They were light, hesitant. A figure stepped onto the bus, clutching something tightly to their chest. The amber light hit them, and a fresh wave of horror washed over me. It wasn't me this time. It was someone else. Someone I had lost. And as they walked down the aisle, the item they were clutching became clear. It was a book. A beautifully bound journal with thick, pristine pages. Except every single page was completely blank. They stopped right beside my seat. They didn't sit down. They just stood there, holding the empty journal out towards me. "Why didn't you finish it?" A voice echoed in my mind, ringing with a quiet, devastating disappointment. "You promised to leave a legacy. You promised to write it all down. But you were too busy chasing ghosts." The cold air from the open doors seemed to bite into my skin. The doors didn't close. The bus didn't move. We were just waiting, waiting for me to take the blank book. I looked at the journal. The heavy leather binding, the intricate stitching along the spine. I knew this book. I had spent weeks planning it, hunting for the perfect pages, visualizing the exact layout. It was supposed to be for his 10th birthday, a milestone, a physical, undeniable piece of my heart that my son could hold on to long after I was gone, a legacy. I had organized the entire photo shoot to go with it. I obsessed over every single lighting choice, every angle, desperately trying to capture the exact essence of a mother's love on camera. I wanted it to be a masterpiece. But the final blessing page, the actual raw words I needed to leave for him, I kept leaving it blank. I kept waiting for the perfect moment, the perfect inspiration. And in my endless pursuit of perfection, I was leaving him with nothing. My trembling fingers reached out. The moment my skin touched the cold leather cover, the figure dissolved into the damp Lagos mist, like smoke caught in a sudden breeze. Gone. The doors slid shut with a sharp hiss. The bus lurched forward much faster this time. The low rhythmic hum of the engine grew louder. It sounded angry now, urgent. I stumbled back to my seat, clutching the blank book tightly to my chest. My breathing was shallow and fast. I closed my eyes, praying for the bridge to just end, praying to see the toll gate, praying for the familiar, chaotic glow of the mainland. But instead of the city, a new sound pierced the dead silence of the bus. Static. A sharp, violent crackling of static coming from the front of the bus, from a small, ancient radio speaker mounted just above the driver's empty seat. The static hissed, popping loudly, before slowly fading into a melody, a haunting, beautiful, cinematic instrumental. My breath caught in my throat. I knew this arrangement. I knew every single chord, every subtle shift in the tempo, every layer of strings. It was a track from Where I Found Me, my own album, the music Juliet Necker wrote, the music I had poured my absolute soul into bringing to life. But it wasn't playing normally. The tempo was warped, dragging slowly, dipping in and out of tune, like a cassette tape melting under a harsh sun. Then, a voice broke through the distorted melody. It wasn't singing, it was speaking. It sounded like a radio newscaster, but the tone was flat, robotic, and entirely devoid of human empathy. Breaking news tonight from the Lagos metropolis. The voice echoed through the speakers, bouncing off the perfect yellow walls of the Danfo. Authorities are investigating the strange case of a local woman crushed completely under the weight of her own unrelenting ambition. I covered my mouth with my hand, staring in horror at the speaker. She was found surrounded by scattered study notes for Mark 211 and journalism. Sources say she was frantically preparing for her May exams, trying desperately to master the complex theories of mass communication, while completely failing to communicate with the people right in front of her. "No," I whispered, my voice trembling. "No, that's not true. Stop." But the radio only got louder, the volume swelling until it rattled the glass of the windows. A tragic case of a creative who tried to be everything to everyone. A producer, a student, a mother, an agency owner, a woman who spent all her energy building empires in her mind, only to end up entirely, utterly alone on a bridge to nowhere. I screamed. I lunged out of my seat, stumbling down the narrow aisle as the bus violently swerved. I reached the dark partition separating the passengers from the driver, slamming my fists against the pitch-black tinted glass. "Turn it off!" I yelled, hot tears finally breaking through, stinging my eyes and blurring my vision. I said, "Turn it off!" The music abruptly snapped. The radio died. Silence crashed back over the bus, heavy, suffocating, absolute silence. I leaned my forehead against the cold, dark glass of the partition, gasping for air. My chest heaved. The yellow streetlights continued their relentless flash. Dark, flash, dark. And then the engine shifted gears. The brakes began to whine. We were making another stop. I slowly turned around to face the doors. I didn't want to look. My heart was pounding so hard I could feel it in my teeth. But the universe wasn't giving me a choice tonight. The doors slid open, and this time, the person stepping onto the bus wasn't walking alone. I backed away from the open doors, my breath hitching in my throat. Two figures stepped out of the thick, swirling fog and onto the bus. The first was a shadow, just a tall, featureless silhouette wearing a familiar tailored blazer, my blazer. But the second person made my knees weak. It was my little sister. She looked exactly the way I saw her last. Vibrant, sharp, the absolute genius of the family. She was wearing an oversized hoodie with the word Soul Sips printed across the front in a bold, clean font. She was holding a phone up, the camera lens pointed directly at the shadowy figure standing next to her. She was laughing. I could see her shoulders shaking with joy, but there was no sound. The bus was completely silent, save for the low, angry vibration of the engine. I took a step forward, my hand reaching out. "Hey!" I whispered, my voice cracking. "Hey! I'm right here. Look at me." She didn't hear me. She just kept walking down the aisle, her eyes glued to the screen of her phone. She walked right past my seat. The cold air radiating off the shadow figure sent a violent shiver down my spine as it followed her. They sat down in the very back row. I turned around, gripping the back of my seat, desperately trying to catch her eye. But she was totally focused on the shadow. And then Her voice echoed in my mind, not her actual voice, but a distorted, echoey memory of it. You know what the funniest part is? Her voice reverberated through the empty yellow bus. She gives the most incredible advice to the entire world. She pointed the phone camera at the faceless shadow. Thousands of people tune in to listen to her self-improvement audios. They take notes. They change their lives because of the wisdom she shares. She tells them how to unveil their inner critic. She gives them the blueprint for discipline. She creates this beautiful healing space, but she refuses to step inside it herself. The shadow figure nodded slowly, mimicking my exact posture, the way I cross my arms when I'm defensive. No, I muttered, shaking my head. That's not fair. I do it for us. I work this hard so I can build something that lasts. She is building an empire, my sister's voice continued, completely ignoring my plea. But she is doing it by burning down her own house. She is so obsessed with the brand, with the image, with the flawless execution of every single detail, that she is turning into a ghost. The word hung in the air. Ghost. Look at her, my sister said, her smile fading into a look of deep, profound sadness. She is sitting right next to me, but she hasn't really been here in months. I felt a hot tear slide down my cheek. I wanted to scream that she was wrong. I wanted to defend the sleepless nights, the endless editing, the relentless pressure I put on myself to be the perfect producer, the perfect writer, the perfect sister, but the words wouldn't come, because deep down in the dark, quiet corners of my soul, I knew she was right. Suddenly, the bus violently jerked forward. I was thrown back into my seat as the engine roared a deafening mechanical scream that sounded like tearing metal. The soft amber light inside the Danfo flickered rapidly and turned a harsh, blinding crimson red. The yellow street lights outside my window were no longer flashing in a rhythm. They were a continuous, blinding blur of speed. I looked back. The back row was empty. My sister and the shadow were gone. The bus was hurtling down the Third Mainland Bridge faster than any vehicle should be able to move. The concrete barriers outside the window began to crack and splinter. The very fabric of the bridge, the reality around me, was starting to collapse. From the front of the bus, the black-tinted partition began to slowly roll down. The driver's seat was no longer empty. A figure was sitting there, both hands gripping the steering wheel so tightly their knuckles were bone white. They were completely rigid, staring straight ahead at the endless dark road. The bus swerved violently to the left, scraping against the side barrier. Sparks flew outside the window in a shower of brilliant, terrifying orange. "Stop the bus!" I screamed over the deafening roar of the engine. "You're going to kill us!" The figure at the wheel didn't flinch. They slowly turned their head towards me, and under the harsh, flashing red lights of the cabin, I finally saw who was driving. The face staring back at me from the driver's seat was flawless. There were no dark circles under her eyes. Her posture was completely rigid, absolutely perfect. She was wearing a sharp, tailored suit that looked incredibly expensive. Not a single hair was out of place. She looked like the ultimate untouchable version of a CEO. The version of me I always visualized when I closed my eyes and imagined having everything perfectly under control. But her eyes were completely dead. They were empty, cold, and entirely devoid of any warmth or empathy. She turned back to the dark road ahead. She didn't blink. She just pressed her foot down harder on the accelerator. The engine screamed. "What are you doing?" I yelled, stumbling forward, grabbing the back of her seat to steady myself as the bus violently swerved again. "Stop the vehicle! You are going to run us right off the bridge." "I am doing what you asked me to do." Her voice was sharp, cutting through the chaotic roar of the engine like a knife. It didn't echo in my mind this time. She was speaking out loud, I am getting us to the destination. I am achieving the goal. There is no destination, I screamed, tears streaming down my face. Look out the window. The bridge is crumbling. There is nothing out there. Sacrifices must be made for greatness, she replied smoothly, her voice completely detached. You wanted a flawless legacy. You wanted the agency to be perfect. You wanted the film to be perfect. You wanted your grades, your music, your brand, every single thing to be absolutely untouchable. I am the only one who can drive us there. You are too soft. You keep stopping to mourn the things we have to leave behind. She violently jerked the steering wheel. The yellow Danfo crashed against the concrete barrier. The sound of tearing metal was deafening. The right side of the bus was riding the absolute edge of the bridge, hovering dangerously over the black churning lagoon below. You are destroying everything, I sobbed, reaching out and grabbing her arm. It felt like grabbing a block of solid ice. You chased away my sister. You erased my son's journal. You are not building a legacy. You are just leaving me alone. Her head snapped towards me. For the first time, a look of pure, terrifying anger crossed her flawless face. I am the only thing keeping you from being a failure, she roared, the amber lights of the bus shattering, plunging us into near darkness, illuminated only by the frantic yellow flashes from outside. If you take this wheel from me, you will be messy, you will be tired, you will make mistakes, you will fail. I looked at her. I looked at the cold, ruthless perfection I had been chasing my entire life. The perfection that was currently driving me right off a cliff. I know, I whispered. I let go of her arm and lunged for the steering wheel. She screamed a horrible, mechanical sound of pure static as I threw my entire body weight against her, grabbing the wheel with both hands. The bus violently pitched to the left, spinning wildly across the empty lanes of the Third Mainland Bridge. Let it go! She shrieked, her flawless face contorting into something monstrous. No! I yelled back, my voice tearing from my throat. I am allowed to be tired. I am allowed to rest. I am allowed to leave a page blank. I wrenched the wheel as hard as I could. The world exploded in a blinding flash of white light. The sound of the engine, the screaming, the tearing metal, it all vanished in a single deafening heartbeat. Cold air. Damp, salty air brushing against my cheek. I opened my eyes. I was lying on cold concrete. The deafening silence was gone, replaced by the soft, rhythmic lapping of water. I slowly sat up, my entire body aching. I was on the pedestrian walkway of the Third Mainland Bridge. But it wasn't the pitch-black, endless nightmare from before. The sky above the lagoon was painted in soft strokes of violet and deep burning orange. Dawn was breaking over Lagos. The city was just starting to wake up. In the distance, I could hear the faint, familiar honking of early morning traffic making its way from the mainland. I looked around. There was no yellow bus, no shattered glass, no flawless, terrifying driver. Just me. I looked down at my hands. They were trembling, but they were mine. I reached into my jacket pocket. My fingers brushed against a thick, small notebook. My own personal journal. I pulled it out and opened it. The pages were filled with my messy, rushed handwriting, ideas, flaws, crossed out sentences, real life. I stood up, gripping the railing of the bridge, looking out over the water as the sun finally crested the horizon, bathing the entire city in a warm, golden light. They say if you drive fast enough over the bridge at 2 a.m., you can outrun your own thoughts, but you can never outrun yourself. You can never outrun the parts of you that are messy, the parts that need grace, the parts that break under pressure. We spend so much time building perfect, polished versions of ourselves for the world to see. We curate the audio, we filter the image, we write the script where we never fail. But a flawless life is an empty one. it is a ghost town. Real life. The the kind of life that actually leaves a legacy happens in the edits. It happens in the mistakes. It happens when you finally stop the vehicle, step out into the messy, unpredictable dawn, and realize that you don't have to be perfect to be worthy. You just have to be here. I took a deep breath of the morning air. I put the journal back in my pocket, and for the first time in a very, very long time, I started walking home. The Midnight Danfo Part 2, The Echoes. I am staring at the empty seat. Just seconds ago, she was there, the woman in the emerald green dress. Me. But now, the torn vinyl is bare. The only proof that she existed is a faint sickening chill hanging in the damp air, and the smell. It smells like ozone and ancient rotting river water. My heart is a frantic, violent drum against my ribs. I press my back so hard against the metal frame of the seat that it bruises my spine. I want to scream. I want to yell for the driver, to bang on the metal partition and beg him to pull over. But I can't. My throat is closed tight, locked by a terror so deep it feels prehistoric. I, slowly, agonizingly, turn my head to look out the window. The Third Mainland Bridge is still rushing by. The yellow street lights are still flashing. Flash, dark, ends, flash, dark, rhythmically sweeping across my trembling hands. But something is wrong with the bridge. The lights, they are spacing out. Earlier, they were a steady rhythm. Now, there are long, agonizing stretches of absolute blackness between each yellow flash. It is as if the bridge is stretching, elongating into infinity. I look at my phone. The screen is dead, completely black. No reflection, no backlight, just a piece of cold glass in my palm. Okay, I whisper to myself. The sound of my own voice in the empty bus is terrifying. Okay, Zora, breathe. You are just tired. Your mind is playing tricks on you. The stress, the burnout, it's just sleep deprivation. I close my eyes, forcing myself to inhale the heavy, exhaust-choked air. 1, 2, 3. Crack. My eyes snap open. The sound came from the front of the bus, near the driver's cabin. It wasn't a mechanical sound. It sounded like a bone snapping. I gripped the metal rail of the seat in front of me. My knuckles turn white. I slowly lean out into the narrow aisle, peering through the dim, murky amber lights toward the front. "Driver," I call out. My voice is thin, fragile, swallowed instantly by the roaring engine and the rain lashing against the glass. "Oga, are we close to the mainland?" No answer. The silhouette of the driver has not moved. He sits perfectly rigid. His head does not bob with the violent swaying of the bus. His arms do not turn the steering wheel, even as we navigate the sweeping curve of the bridge. He is completely frozen. A fresh wave of nausea washes over me. I slide out of my seat, my legs shaking so violently I can barely stand. The floor of the bus is slick with rainwater and something thicker, something dark that coats the soles of my shoes. I take one step forward, then another. "Oga," I say again, a little louder. As I inch closer to the middle of the bus, the single amber bulb above my head begins to flicker. It buzzes, a nasty, angry sound like a trapped wasp. The light dims to a sickly yellow, then flares bright, then dims again. And in that flickering light, I see the shadows moving. They are not my shadows. They are cast along the rusted walls, long and twisted, completely independent of the light source. They ride against the metal, creeping toward the back of the bus, toward me. Suddenly, a violent jolt rocks the Danfo. I fall to my knees, scraping my skin against the jagged metal flooring. Sparks. A massive blinding shower of intense orange sparks erupts from the electrical panel near the front door. It looks like a firework detonating inside the cramped space. The sparks cascade down, bouncing off the wet floor, hissing as they extinguish. The amber light bulb pops overhead, shattering into a dozen pieces that rain down on my hair. For 2 seconds, there is absolute suffocating darkness. Then, with a heavy mechanical clank, the emergency lights kick in. The bus is instantly bathed in a harsh, unstable, deep crimson red glare. It pulses like a dying heartbeat. The red light turns the interior of the bus into a slaughterhouse. Everything looks wet, metallic, and terrifying. The shadows are no longer just writhing, they are lunging. I scramble backward on my hands and knees, tearing my tights, desperate to get back to my seat. My breath is coming in shallow, hyperventilating gasps. The radio sparks to life again. The ancient, corroded speaker grill above the driver spits out that same heavy rhythmic static. But this time, a voice cuts through the noise. It is my voice. Clear, calm, utterly devoid of emotion. The bridge never ends, Zora. The water is so cold underneath. Don't you want to rest? You are so tired. Just let the water in. Tears finally break free. They spill hot and fast down my cheeks, stinging the cold skin. I press my hands over my ears, shaking my head violently. Stop it! Stop it! Make it stop! I scream, the sound tearing my throat. But the voice on the radio just laughs. A hollow metallic laugh that echoes over the roar of the engine. I look out the window. The yellow street lights are completely gone. There is only blackness outside. Absolute, consuming blackness. And then, a hand smacks against the outside of the window glass. Right next to my face. It is a hand wearing a tarnished silver bangle. My bangle. I freeze, paralyzed by a horror so absolute it steals the breath from my lungs. I stare at the wet glass, illuminated by the flashing red emergency light. Slowly, from the absolute darkness outside a moving vehicle, a face presses itself against the glass, peering in at me. It is the woman in the green dress. Her face is pale, waterlogged, and her eyes are completely black voids. And as the red light flashes, she opens her mouth and begins to scream. The scream is entirely silent. I can see her jaw unhinged, her eyes wide and black. I can see the sheer violent force of her terror, but the thick glass and the roaring engine swallow the sound completely. She is pounding her fists against the window now, over and over. Thud, thud, thud. The sound vibrates through the metal wall of the Danfo, traveling straight up my spine. The harsh, pulsing red emergency light catches the silver bangle on her wrist every time she strikes the glass. My bangle. I am frozen on the floor, my breath hitching in my chest. Then, a sickening sound cuts through the heavy air. Crack. A tiny, delicate spider web of fractured glass blooms right where her palm is pressed. The bridge outside is still an endless, suffocating black void. There is no road anymore. There is no Lagos. There is only this bus, plunging forward into nothingness. Crack. The fracture grows. A jagged line of splintered glass shoots across the window pane. Water begins to seep through the crack, thick, freezing, and smelling of ancient decay. If that window breaks, the blackness outside will rush in and swallow me whole. Survival instinct finally overrides the paralysis. I scramble backward, my boots slipping on the wet metallic floor. I tear my eyes away from the window and look toward the front of the bus. The driver, he is still sitting there, a dark, rigid silhouette against the flashing red lights. Stop the bus! I scream, my voice cracking, desperate and raw. You have to stop the bus. She is breaking in. He doesn't flinch. His hands are still gripping the massive steering wheel. I force myself up. My legs feel like they are made of lead, but I push forward. Gripping the rusted metal poles of the passenger seats, I pull myself up the narrow aisle. The bus is swaying violently now, lurching side to side as if the invisible road beneath us is collapsing. Sparks continue to shower from the broken fuse box, raining down on my shoulders, burning tiny holes in my shirt. I don't care. I have to reach the front. I said, "Stop!" I lunge forward, grabbing the driver by the shoulder of his faded yellow shirt, and I pull him toward me. The heavy body slumps backward, slipping effortlessly out of the driver's seat and collapsing onto the floor at my feet. I stared down. My lungs stop working. The air leaves the room. It is not a man. It is just a uniform. A faded yellow shirt and dark trousers, stuffed with old, rotten newspapers and bound together with wire. A scarecrow. A hollow, empty thing. There has never been a driver. The Danfo has been driving itself. I look up at the steering wheel. It is turning on its own, jerking left and right, guided by invisible hands. Beyond the cracked windshield, there is only the rushing, absolute dark. Smash! I whip my head around. The window in the middle of the bus has finally shattered. A torrent of freezing, black water explodes into the cabin, carrying with it the smell of the deep lagoon. The red emergency lights flicker wildly as the water floods the floorboards, rising instantly to my ankles. And climbing through the shattered window is the woman in the green dress. She crawls through the jagged glass, her movements jerky and unnatural. She stands up in the aisle. The water drips from her dark, curly hair. Her black, void-like eyes lock onto mine. "You never let us rest," she whispers. Her voice echoes inside my own skull. "You pushed us until we broke. So now, we sink." She raises her hand, pointing toward the front windshield. I turn just in time to see the endless black void suddenly shift. A massive rusted iron guardrail appears out of nowhere, dead ahead. We are not just driving in the dark. We are driving off the edge of the bridge. "No!" I scream, throwing myself into the empty driver's seat. I grab the massive steering wheel, trying to wrench it to the side. The metal is freezing cold. I slam my foot down on what I think is the brake pedal, pressing with every ounce of strength I have left. But the bus does not slow down. The doppelganger's voice is right beside my ear now, cold, inevitable. "Let's go, Zora." The Danfo hits the guardrail with a deafening metallic screech that tears through the universe. The impact shatters the windshield into a million glittering diamonds. And then we are airborne. The violent shaking stops. The roaring engine cuts out. For one long, agonizing heartbeat, there is weightlessness. The red lights fade out. The sparks die. The bus plunges into the pitch black water. But there is no splash. There is no violent crash. Instead, there is just silence. A profound, impossibly heavy silence. I am floating in the dark. The freezing water does not rush into my lungs. The bus is gone. The woman in the green dress is gone. The red lights are gone. There is only the dark and the slow, rhythmic sound of my own heartbeat. Thump, thump, thump. I open my eyes. I am sitting in a chair, a comfortable, familiar chair. Soft, warm amber light filters through a crack in the curtains. Outside, the distant, muffled sound of Lagos morning traffic drifts into the room. I look down at my hands. They are trembling. I am back in my own room. My laptop screen is open in front of me, the cursor blinking patiently at the end of a long, exhausting document. I touch my cheek. It is wet with real tears. I look toward the mirror hanging on the wall across the room. I stare at my reflection. My eyes are tired, carrying heavy bags from too many late nights, too much burnout, too much pushing. I raise my hand. The reflection raises hers. I look down at my wrist. The tarnished silver bangle is there, cold against my skin. I take a deep, shaky breath, reach up, and slowly close the laptop. The ride is over. It is time to rest. I am sitting at my desk. The laptop is closed. The sun is trying to push its way through the heavy curtains. I can hear the sounds of Lagos waking up outside, the distant honking of a keke, the muffled shout of a street hawker. I am safe. I let out a long, shuddering breath. It was just a nightmare, the ultimate manifestation of burnout. My brain simply short-circuited from the stress, the endless deadlines, the pressure to keep creating. I stand up. My legs feel heavy, stiff. I walk toward the small kitchen attached to my room. I need water, cold, clean water, to wash the phantom smell of the lagoon out of my nose. I turn the faucet. The water sputters, a harsh, dry cough from the pipes. Then, a thick, dark liquid begins to ooze from the tap. It is not water, it is black, smelling of rusted iron and ancient decay. I stumble backward, my heart immediately kicking into that familiar violent overdrive. No, I whisper. No, no, no. I woke up. I am awake. I turn around, looking at my room. The soft morning light filtering through the curtains. It is changing. The warm yellow glow is slowly shifting, deepening, turning into a harsh, unstable amber. The walls of my bedroom begin to peel. The paint curls and blackens, falling away like dead skin to reveal rusted yellow metal underneath. The floorboards beneath my feet groan, shifting and buckling until they are no longer wood, but wet metallic grating. A low mechanical rumble vibrates through the soles of my feet, the roar of a heavy diesel engine. I spin around to look at the mirror on my wall. My reflection is there, but she is not panicking. She is standing perfectly still, wearing that frayed emerald green dress, staring at me with those cold, empty eyes. She slowly raises her hand and taps the glass from the inside. Crack! The mirror shatters. The illusion of my room completely collapses. The walls fall away into the rushing, suffocating blackness. The cold wind howls, whipping my hair across my face. I am back on the Danfo. The red emergency lights are gone. We are back to the dim, sickly amber bulb. But the bus is no longer plunging off a bridge. It is moving forward, tearing through an endless, foggy void. And this time, I am not alone. The Midnight Danfo Part 5. The Passengers. I press my back against the rusted wall of the bus, my breathing shallow and erratic. The narrow aisle stretches out in front of me, far longer than a Danfo should be. It looks like it goes on for miles into the murky amber fog. Every single seat is occupied. Dozens of figures sit in absolute silence. Their heads are bowed, their shoulders slumped in total defeat. They are just silhouettes, carved out of heavy, suffocating shadow. I take a trembling step forward. As I pass the first row, I hear a whisper. It does not come from the figure's mouth. It comes from inside my own mind. You haven't done enough. I freeze. The voice sounds like my own. but distorted, tired. I take another step. The shadow in the next seat turns its featureless head toward me. You can't stop working. If you stop, you disappear. My chest tightens. These are not ghosts. They are echoes. Every doubt, every late night anxiety, every moment I sacrificed my own peace for the sake of the grind, sitting here in the dark, riding the bus with me. I force myself to walk down the aisle. The air is so thick, it feels like walking through deep water. They expect more from you. Keep pushing. Ignore the pain. The whispers overlap, growing louder with every step I take. It becomes a deafening chorus of my own insecurities, a symphony of burnout. Shut up, I whisper, clutching my head. Sleep is a luxury. You haven't earned it. Write more, produce more. I said shut up. I scream, the sound tearing through the foggy cabin. The whispers stop instantly. The silence that follows is heavier than the noise. All at once, every single shadow figure on the bus stands up. They turn to face me. Hundreds of empty, featureless faces blocking the aisle, blocking the way to the front door. From the very back of the bus, a familiar figure steps through the crowd of shadows. The woman in the green dress. She walks toward me, her bare feet making no sound on the wet metal floor. The shadows part for her. You built this bus, Zora, she says, her voice echoing perfectly in the damp air. You filled these seats. You created the monster that refuses to let you rest. She stops just inches from me. I can feel the freezing cold radiating off her skin. And now, she whispers, leaning in close to my ear, you are going to drive it forever. The Midnight Danfo, Part 6, The Toll. No, the word is barely a breath, a fragile, trembling sound. The woman in the green dress tilts her head, her black eyes narrowing. No? I look around at the standing shadows, the physical manifestations of my own relentless pressure. My hands form fists at my sides. The silver bangle on my wrist digs into my skin, grounding me. I am done, I say. My voice is stronger this time. It cuts through the fog. I look directly into the cold, empty eyes of my doppelganger. I am done running. I am done punishing myself. I step forward. The woman in the green dress doesn't move, but the shadows around her begin to vibrate, losing their shape, turning into wisps of dark smoke. You can't leave, she hisses, her face twisting in sudden anger. If you rest, you fail. If I don't rest, I reply, stepping so close we are almost touching, I die. I reach out and I grab the silver bangle on my wrist, the symbol of the endless cycle, the thing she kept using to mock me. With a sharp, violent pull, I snap it off my wrist. The metal breaks with a loud ringing crack that sounds like a gunshot in the silent bus. I drop the broken pieces of silver onto the wet floorboard. The moment the metal hits the floor, the woman in the green dress screams. It is not a silent scream this time. It is a deafening, agonizing wail of defeat. Her form begins to dissolve, tearing apart like wet paper in a hurricane. The shadow figures around me collapse, turning into ash that is instantly sucked out of the shattered windows into the roaring void. The sickly amber light flares into a blinding pure white. The roar of the engine turns into a high-pitched ringing, and then silence. Pure, clean, absolute silence. I blink against the sudden brightness. The smell of old river water is gone. The cold is gone. I am sitting on a yellow plastic seat. The metal walls around me are still yellow, but they are not rusted. I look out the window. The sun is rising over the Lagos lagoon. The water is a brilliant, shimmering gold. The Third Mainland Bridge is packed with early morning traffic. The Danfo is parked safely on the side of the road. The door is wide open, letting in the warm, humid morning breeze. I am alone on the bus. There are no shadows. There is no driver. I slowly stand up. My legs are steady. The crushing weight that had been sitting on my chest for months is finally gone. I walk down the aisle, stepping over a small piece of broken, tarnished silver lying forgotten on the floor. I step out of the Danfo, my boots hitting the solid, warm concrete of the mainland. I take a deep breath of the Lagos air. It is a new day, and finally, I am going to rest.